Hi guys, I'm Dylan. I'm 16 years old. 2 years ago, I made a huge mistake. Maybe you can learn from my story and you won't end up with regrets like me. Jason is my best friend. We're really close, and he's really important to me. Our parents were neighbors. We played on the same playground. We went to the same primary school. We got into fights with other kids, protected each other, fell off our bikes, got hurt, cried, laughed. We grew up like brothers. We can talk about anything, our family problems, girls we liked, the secrets we never shared with anyone. Sometimes we just sit in silence next to each other because we can understand each other without talking. He is my only real friend in life. Unfortunately, I did something to hurt him badly. It was 2 years ago. Jason told me about a girl he had just met. He was so happy. He told me how beautiful and sweet she was. I think I'm falling for her, he said. So I said, dude, go for it. Just follow your heart. They started dating a few days later. Her name was Hazel. Of course, he wanted to introduce me, his best friend, to his new girlfriend. So we decided to meet at a cafe the next day. When I arrived, neither of them were there. So I sat down to wait for them. The girl at the next table caught my eye. She was so attractive. She was playing with her phone and looking at me every now and then. I couldn't stop looking at her. I thought to myself, how can I meet this girl? Just then, she smiled at me. Was it possible that she liked me as well? I was just about to go meet her when Jason came in. She got up when she saw him. He walked up to her and kissed her. And they came up to me. She said, "Hi, Dylan, I'm Hazel," and wanted to shake my hand. I was so disappointed. Apparently, she was early like I was. She had been looking at me and thinking, could this be Dylan? I felt really bad, but how could I know that she was Jason's girlfriend? We sat down and started chatting. Jason was telling her funny memories about us and she was laughing. I found myself in awe of her laugh. I immediately looked away and tried not to think about her laugh. That day was seriously difficult for me. I was so charmed by her that I dreamt about her. In my dream, we were sitting somewhere high up and watching the sunset together. It was so cliché. There was a light breeze and she was looking at me with her beautiful smile. I don't remember the rest. I was so angry with myself in the morning. How could I have a romantic dream about my best friend's girlfriend? Obviously, I couldn't control my dreams, but I could control what happened in real life. Hazel was Jason's girlfriend, and she was going to stay that way. Jason and Hazel were spending a lot of time together. Sometimes we all hung out together. I didn't really want to be around Hazel because I was in awe of whatever she was doing. Like the way she laughed with her head thrown back or touched your arm while talking, the way her eyebrow rose when she got angry. I liked everything about her, and this made me feel awful. I started dodging them because I didn't want to fall in love with her, but they were getting upset with me for not spending time with them. One night, the door rang. It was Jason. I had never seen him so miserable. He couldn't even talk. "Did something happen to your parents?" I asked anxiously. He tried not to cry. "Hazel and I broke up," he said. I turned my head away and tried to hide the involuntary smile on my face. Yes, unfortunately, I was happy. Apparently, Hazel told him that she wanted to talk. She said that she wasn't having fun like she used to, and that they had had long silences because they had nothing in common to talk about. Jason wasn't expecting this, so he was shocked. He tried to change her mind, but couldn't. I tried to console him, but the days that followed were pretty bad for him. One day, Hazel sent me a text and said that she was really sad. I wanted to reply, but I didn't. She texted again. She wanted to talk face to face. I couldn't possibly do anything behind Jason's back, so I showed him her message. "There's no way I'll meet her," I said. Jason responded in a way that I didn't expect. He got his hopes up. "Please talk to her. Maybe you'll convince her to come back to me," he said. So we met up. She was sadder than I expected. She said she loved Jason, but their relationship wasn't working anymore. She was crying when she said this. As I listened to her speak, I focused on her lips, forgetting that she was talking about Jason. By the time we finished talking, I realized that Hazel had no intention of going back to Jason. I also realized that I was more in love with her than ever. A lot of time had passed since Jason and Hazel's breakup. Hazel and I were texting each other and sometimes meeting up. We were talking about random stuff and we rarely mentioned Jason anymore. If it was up to me, I'd see her every day, but I was trying to control myself. A few months went by like this. I was now obsessed with her. I couldn't even sleep at night. One morning, I woke up screaming, "Enough!" Yes, it was enough. I couldn't live like this anymore. I decided to talk to Hazel no matter what. I drew up my courage and met up with her. She could tell that something was up. "I've liked you since the moment I first saw you. Actually, it's more than that. I fell in love with you," I blurted out suddenly. She was shocked. She raised her eyebrow and I even adored how she did that. She said, "Do you hear yourself? Didn't you think about how hurt Jason would be if he knew you said this? I'm ready to fight with him if necessary." "Doesn't this show you how strong my feelings are?" I said. She looked into my eyes. I thought she was going to say something, but she just left. That night, I felt so helpless. I cried. A few days later, Hazel wanted to meet up. I was going to see her, but I was scared. I was worried that she might have told Jason. Maybe they were both going to confront me, but she was alone when I went to meet her and she hugged me right away. I was so surprised. I hugged her back. She was crying and her lip was trembling. "It's really hard for us to have a normal relationship. Jason will always be between us. We have to be careful about this," she said. I didn't understand what she wanted from me. "You need to talk to Jason. If he says he's okay with it, then we can be together," she said. I couldn't imagine talking to Jason about this, but this was her condition, and I was going to have to do it one way or another. At first, I couldn't find the courage, but Hazel was very clear, so I didn't really have a choice. "I need to talk to you about something important," I said to Jason. I opened up about my feelings for Hazel. I told him that I felt really bad, but that I couldn't help it. And then I let him know about what Hazel and I talked about. He was obviously shocked. "You're joking, right? Are you asking for my permission?" he asked. I looked away. He sprang up. He called me a jerk and punched me. I didn't do anything to defend myself because he was right. He left without another word. I didn't care about losing him or even the punch. The problem was Jason wasn't okay with the whole thing. That meant Hazel's condition hadn't been met. So I had now lost my best friend as well as the girl that I'm in love with. The next morning, I saw a text from Jason when I woke up. "Dude, Hazel and I weren't happy, but maybe you'll be happy with her. Follow your heart," he wrote. I was ashamed, but also happy. I was so proud of my friend, but also sad for him. I met up with Hazel. She got really emotional when I showed her the text. She hugged me and put her head on my shoulder. We didn't mention it again for the rest of the day. I thought the coming days would be like a dream, but they weren't. I started dealing with feelings that I didn't anticipate. Like, if we were holding hands, I would suddenly imagine her holding hands with Jason and I would pull away. For example, when Hazel wanted to go somewhere, I would ask her, "Have you been there with Jason?" If she were to say something romantic, I would think, "Did she say this to Jason too?" She knew what was going on. She kept telling me that Jason was in the past now. But I couldn't really enjoy any of our time together with this stuff constantly on my mind. Jason and I were still hanging out, by the way. We tried to act like nothing had happened, but things were a bit different. Yet, I valued our friendship now more because he had shown me that he put my happiness above his. My relationship with Hazel was unstable because of me. I was so jealous of the past that we couldn't live in the moment. We broke up a few times. I couldn't make it work with or without her. I was afraid of losing her, but I couldn't stop myself. Hazel was a really smart girl. She came up with a new condition to solve our problem. "I don't think you should be friends with Jason. We can't have a healthy relationship like this. If he's out of your life, he won't be between us anymore," she said. She gave me an ultimatum, and she had every right to do it. I didn't even have to think about my answer. I won't stop being friends with Jason. If I have to choose, then I choose my friend. If I were you, I would have done the same thing. You made the right decision for all of us, she said, and hugged me. That was the last time we hugged or saw each other. I couldn't tell Jason what had happened, but apparently Hazel did. I found that out from Jason's message. I heard you couldn't go where your heart wanted to. Maybe you should follow your feet instead. Want to play FIFA tonight? After all I've done, I can't really tell you to appreciate the good friends that you have.
Hi everyone, I'm Ezra. Let me introduce you to Eddie. Eddie is my ex-girlfriend. I used to be in love with her, but unfortunately she let me down. Let me tell you the whole story from the beginning. I started going to my current school last year. Eddie was on the swimming team. The first time I saw her was at an inter-school swimming competition. She was the most beautiful girl on the team. That was the day I found myself falling head over heels for her. Every morning when I woke up, I was telling myself, I will see Eddie again today. I was spending a long time getting ready in front of the mirror. Earlier, I didn't care much about my clothes, but now I was thinking long and hard about what to wear each day. Even though my family is middle class, I have a lot of clothes to choose from. I owe this to my dad's wonderful boss. My dad is a personal driver. His boss, Mr. Kit, had a son who was 2 years older than me. He loved extreme sports. Unfortunately, he had a terrible accident while rock climbing and passed away. Mr. Kit had lost his wife a few years earlier. After losing his only son, in addition to his wife, he became very depressed. At that time, Mr. Kit used to invite me to his house quite often. We used to have these long chats. After he overcame his depression, he said, Ezra, the way you think reminds me so much of my son. I feel as if I'm talking to him. It feels really good to spend time with you. I want to give you a scholarship for your education. After you finish college, you can work for my company. I was really happy to hear this. Mr. Kit went on, saying, I only have one favor to ask of you. Can I send my son's clothes over to your house? I'm going to ask you to wear his clothes when you come to see me. I'd be very happy if you could do that for me. I gladly accepted. That's why I have a lot of clothes. I used to only care about what I was wearing when I was going over to Mr. Kit's house. But now, every morning, I was getting ready for my crush, Eddie. My dad would drop me off at school in the mornings. Then he would pick up Mr. Kit and take him to his office. When my dad noticed I was dressing differently, he started to make fun of me. He'd say, Son, you look like you own this car now. Don't be surprised if I start calling you Mr. Ezra. I would say, Dad, please don't tease me. And he'd say, I'm not kidding. You really do look cool in these clothes. Although I left home every day thinking, I will introduce myself to Eddie today, I couldn't bring myself to do it, and I was starting to lose hope. Finally, my chance came when I was least expecting it. I was eating lunch at the cafeteria. Someone came to my table and asked, Is this seat taken? When I looked up, it was Eddie. She took me by surprise and I said, No, it's totally not taken. Eddie sat down smiling. She held out her hand and said, I'm Eddie. I wanted to say, I know, and I love you and your name too. But of course, I couldn't. I held out my hand and said, I'm Ezra. I couldn't take my eyes off of Eddie during lunch. She was even prettier up close. I was extremely happy now that she was aware of my existence. The next day at lunch, I looked for Eddie, but I couldn't find her. Just as I was leaving the cafeteria to go to class, I heard her voice, Ezra. When I turned to look, she was standing right in front of me. Before I could say anything, she said, I just got back from swimming practice. Come, let's do a TikTok. I didn't know Eddie had a TikTok account. We shot something stupid and uploaded it to both our accounts. Of course, we started following each other too. That night, we texted for hours. When I went to bed, I had to pinch myself really hard because I was so afraid this would turn out to be a dream. If it could hurt this much, I was most definitely not dreaming. I fell asleep, smiling from happiness. In the morning, my dad dropped me off at school again. Just then, I ran into Eddie. I used to walk around the whole school just to catch a glimpse of her, but now she started appearing right in front of me. We walked to the school, chatting. Actually, it was her who was doing the talking because I was so nervous that I couldn't think of anything to say. Eddie and I started meeting during every single break. But I couldn't even imagine that a girl like her could even remotely like someone like me. That's why I kept thinking that she only saw me as a friend. As she told me later, she had actually been waiting for me to ask her out. When she realized that I wasn't going to do it, she decided to do it herself. Of course, that hadn't occurred to me back then. So I was really surprised when one Saturday night she texted me, Do you want to hang out tonight? We met at a coffee shop near her house. By the end of the day, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. I was so happy I couldn't sleep that night. I'm not someone who likes to go out in the evenings. As long as I'm in school, I prefer to focus on my studies. It seems like Eddie was my total opposite. On Thursday, she texted me about a restaurant. She wrote, "Want to go to this place for dinner tomorrow? I hear it's very good." I didn't like the idea, but this was a girl that I was in love with. I had to say yes. But there was a problem. The restaurant looked super fancy. I figured it was probably expensive. When I looked at the menu online, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a lot more expensive than I thought. I would have to save up my allowance for a year to be able to afford a place like that. Eddie didn't really show it, but it seemed that her family was very rich and they were used to going to places like this. The next day at school, Eddie asked, "So, what do you think of the restaurant?" I follow that place on Instagram. It's a celebrity hangout. I said sheepishly, "I don't feel comfortable in such places. Can't we just go to that coffee shop near you?" Eddie was disappointed. "For real? But I really want to go to this place. I've never been to such a chic restaurant. Don't I deserve to go to such places?" she said, staring at me. I was confused. Eddie was saying that normally she wouldn't be able to go to such a place. But at the same time, she thought that I could afford to take her there. So I said, "Babe, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I think eating at such a fancy restaurant would probably cost as much as my dad makes in a month. There's no way I can afford that." Eddie got really mad and yelled, "Ezra, your family is so rich. Why are you lying to me?" When I said, "What makes you think that?" she said, "Because you have a driver that drops you off at school every day. Because your car is worth a fortune. Because you only wear designer clothes. You think I can't tell that your family's really well off?" I said, "My dad works as a driver. The car you saw belongs to his boss. The clothes I'm wearing used to belong to the boss's son. It's actually a really sad story. I'll tell you about it sometime." Eddie began crying and suddenly screamed, "You lied to me." When I said, "Babe, you got it all wrong," she said, "Don't call me babe," and ran away. At that moment, everything became clear to me. Eddie had been thinking I was rich. She became my girlfriend because she thought she could live her dream life with me. I felt really humiliated. The love of my life was a gold digger, and she didn't even feel the need to hide it. For a few days, I was devastated. I was thinking about Eddie every waking moment. But then I figured that this wasn't the right way to go about things. Instead of being sad, I had to draw some lessons. I only fell in love with Eddie because she was beautiful. But as I learned, looks could be deceiving. I felt better when I began to think this way. The heartbreak that kept me up at night went away pretty soon. One day my dad said, "My boss is inviting us to his house. He said he had something important to tell us." We went there that evening. Mr. Kit is a wonderful person. We were having a fantastic time as we always do. Then a man came into the room. Mr. Kit said, "Let me introduce you to my attorney, Mr. Turner. He's with us today for a very important matter." The attorney took out a document and began reading. We couldn't believe our ears. My mom couldn't keep herself from crying. The document was Mr. Kit's will. Because he didn't have any other relatives, he had decided to leave half of his fortune to charity and the remaining half to me. I became incredibly rich overnight. Mr. Kit said, "This is the best decision I made in my life. Yes, I lost my son, but now I have an honorary son," and gave me a hug. I was going to receive the inheritance in the future, but Mr. Kit wanted us to have better lives right away. We moved into his house. I started going to a private school. Now I was really living the life Eddie was dreaming about. She had no idea about any of this because we had stopped talking. One day, Mr. Kit called me into his office. He said, "My company sponsored a competition. I'm supposed to present the medals to the winners, but I'm sure they're all young people like yourself. Would you like to go on my behalf?" I was really excited. Half an hour later, my dad and I were at the venue. You guessed it, right? It was a swimming competition, and Eddie was most probably there. The award ceremony had begun as I entered the hall. The presenter said, "Our sponsor is going to present the medals to the winners." I quickly walked towards them. Right next to the presenter was the podium with the top 3 finishers. When I saw that Eddie was one of them, my knees started to shake. It turned out she got second place. She was clearly surprised to see me. First, I presented the gold medal to the winner. Then I stood in front of Eddie. I smiled as I hung the silver medal around her neck. "Congratulations," I said. Eddie didn't say anything because she was completely stunned. That night, I got the message I'd been waiting for. "Hey, what's up?" I didn't write back because I didn't know how to respond. After a while, Eddie wrote, "I always knew you were lying to me." That made me upset. I replied, "I never told you a single lie in my life. I really wasn't rich back when we were dating, but then something surprising happened." Eddie wrote back, "I don't understand any of this, but I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I missed you so much. I'm sure you missed me too." Of course, I didn't reply. She must have gotten the message because she never tried to get in touch with me after that.
Hello, I'm Julia, and 14 years old, just like my best friend, Amelie. We go to the same class and have spent most of our free time together since first grade. This got difficult when I met my first boyfriend a few months ago. Lucas and I spent a lot of time together, of course. As a result, I didn't have quite as much time for my best friend. This made Amelie sad. Besides, Amelie thought no boy would be interested in her anyway. I like Amelie. She's almost like a sister to me, and I didn't want her to feel that way. She became even more shy since I was with Lucas. When I wanted to do something together with both of them, it was quite cramped at the beginning because Amelie hardly spoke and didn't feel comfortable, so we all had no fun. When my older sister Leonie was home for her semester break, I told her how Amelie was doing and how torn I often was. I often wanted to meet Lucas, but my friendship with Amelie was also important to me. Leonie understood me and said it would probably be best if Amelie met someone too. That would also take away some of her shyness and strengthen her self-confidence, she said. And you should definitely not let your friend down because of a boy. I wasn't going to do that either. One evening, when I was home alone and surfing Snapchat on my tablet, I had an idea. I wanted to give Amelie a bit more self-confidence and send her pictures. From a nice boys account, of course. I invented Ben. After some searching, I also found out how to create a second social media account. Then I searched the depths of the internet for pictures of a sporty boy from Australia. I used our holiday mobile phone to verify the new account as Ben. Shortly after, Ben was online. I had taken a lot of screenshots in the Australian Boys Network, which I wanted to send to Amelie bit by bit. She should feel flattered and simply better by his interest. At least, that was my idea. That evening, I started writing to Amelie as Ben. Ben, who would be in Australia for a long time because his mother had business there. This put him at a safe distance from Amelie. If this little flirtation had served its purpose, I was just going to let it play out. It would work out, I thought. After 3 days of sending Amelie messages and pictures of Ben, she told me. She was in love from the start. That was much more than I had imagined. I did get a bit of a bad feeling, but at the same time, I could watch how well Amelie was doing all of a sudden. It was as if someone had lit a light inside her. She was in a good mood and was more relaxed and at ease with everyone and everything than ever before. Lucas found the transformation strange, but was happy about the much more relaxed get-togethers. My mother also said that Amelie had become an absolutely cute teenager. I was just happy at first. Everything was going well, and Amelie and I were having a great time. She showed me the pictures of Ben and talked to me about how sensitive he was and how well he suited her. She asked me if I thought he had fallen in love with her too, and of course I said yes. Finally, I could also tell her more about Lucas. She often started talking about the boys herself, by which she meant her Ben and my Lucas. Every now and then I felt a bit bad because she was so in love. No wonder I knew exactly what she wanted and what she liked or disliked. Actually, other boys started to take an interest in Amelie. She was now much more relaxed and even funny. Ben had recently told her that he liked the memes she sent him. When she told me about it, I told her that I liked her humor too. That had obviously worked. I thought I could slowly make Ben disappear. When he didn't contact Amelie for a day, she was very depressed. So the next day I sent her another message from Ben. We did more and more things together as a threesome because Amelie and Lucas were getting on better and better. I told Lucas about my secret. He thought it was very weird and told me to stop as soon as possible. He was right, after all. So I let Ben become less likable. Boring photos and bragging about drinking too much and partying. Soon after, she told me how happy I should be about Lucas and how strange Ben was acting. Then came the shock. I read one evening that Amelie wanted to visit Ben. She had spoken to her parents, and they had agreed to go on holiday to Australia because they had always wanted to go there anyway. The next morning, she told me about it at school. At the same time, Lucas was getting more and more annoyed with me every day because he found it impossible that I lied to my best friend like that. This was coming between us more and more. What was I supposed to do? Shortly afterwards, I was with Lucas and Amelie at the birthday of Lena and Leo, twins from our class. We took a break under a tree after a party game. Amelie raved to Lucas about her holiday to Australia. Her parents were going to book everything next week, and in 6 weeks it was going to start. Lucas's facial expression became more and more somber. Then he looked at me and said to Amelie, "Julia has something to tell you." I stammered and just didn't know what to say now. This made Lucas even more annoyed. He jumped up and said that I was a coward and completely wrong if I thought Amelie needed this. He wanted nothing more to do with it, or with me. Off he went. Amelie glared at me angrily and said only, "What? Go on, tell me now." Stammering, I confessed to her that I had been playing Ben. She kept the angry expression, turned deep red, got tears in her eyes, and also ran away in a hurry. My "stop, wait" didn't stop her for a moment. I was paralyzed. Within minutes, I had apparently lost my best friend and my boyfriend. If any of the others approached me, I told them to leave me alone. I was very sad and ashamed. How was I supposed to go to school the next day? At home, I deleted Ben's account and sent Amelie a message saying I was sorry, but she had apparently blocked me. Then I wrote to Lucas that I was very sorry about everything and if we could talk about it tomorrow. He just wrote back that it was too late for that. I cried and couldn't sleep. Fortunately, my parents came home very late that evening. I gradually realized how selfish and arrogant my whole action with Ben had been. I had convinced myself that I was doing it for Amelie, but in doing so, I had lied to myself. I was very afraid of meeting her and Lucas at school the next morning. It was just as bad as I imagined, or worse. Lucas was just talking to Amelie in the schoolyard. As I walked towards them, they turned away. Others in my class looked at me strangely. In the classroom, Amelie sat down at the back with Lena, who had come to school that morning without Leon. I got practically nothing out of class the whole morning. When class was over, I ran after Amelie on the way home and caught up with her too. I asked her to apologize and told her how I had realized the previous night how selfish, stupid, and arrogant the whole action had been. Then I told her how sorry I was for everything, and that I didn't want our long friendship to fail because of my mistake. "What can I do?" I asked her. She shrugged her shoulders and just said she felt bad and didn't know when it would get better. "Just leave me alone for now," she said. What else could I do? So I went home and waited for the next few days for her to talk to me again. It took weeks before things were really okay again, but our friendship survived it. Unlike my friendship with Lucas, it was just over. He couldn't and wouldn't change it, as he said. But he is a good friend of Amelie's, which is not always easy for me. But I have only myself to blame for that. Thank you for listening to me. You will find many other exciting stories on this channel. Just subscribe.